It often seems that the Ottoman Habsburg war over Hungary was a slogging match, and trust us, we feel the same. However, even this conflict, which brought minor changes to the territory, is crucial, both because of its importance to the history of Hungary and Europe, and for a cast of colourful characters that deserve multiple TV shows to be created. Welcome to our video on the Siege of Buda and Eger. The 1530s brought constant warfare to Hungary, as the king, John I Saboya, supported by the Ottoman Sultan Suleiman, fought against the brother of the Holy Roman Emperor Charles V Habsburg, Ferdinand. Although Suleiman's military assistance allowed John I to control most of Hungary, the latter was pressured by the neighbouring Christian monarchs to reconcile with Ferdinand. The King of Poland, Sigismund I Jagiellon, was eager to secure his southern border against the Ottomans by having a strong Hungary, while his wife, the daughter of the Duke of Milan, Bona Sforza, traditionally opposed the Habsburgs, and wanted to marry her daughter Isabella to John I in order to form another Polish-Hungarian alliance. These two parties, alongside envoys from the Holy Roman Empire and the local clergy, forced John I to sign the Treaty of Novgorod in secret from the Ottomans in February of 1538. According to the treaty, Ferdinand accepted John I as the King of Hungary, while John I conceded Western Hungary to Ferdinand and promised to make him his successor. John, who was in his 50s, was expected to remain unmarried and without offspring, but in February of 1539 he married Isabella Jagiellon. That was a shock for the Habsburgs, and forced Ferdinand to inform Suleiman of the treaty in the hopes that the Sultan would abandon John I. Suleiman's reaction is unclear, but it seems that he decided to wait and see what this new situation would bring. Simultaneously, Ferdinand's supporter Stephen Moylat started an uprising in Transylvania in spring of 1540. John marched against these rebels and won an easy victory. Back home, his queen was with child, and in July of the same year gave birth to a son, John Sigismund. The birth of a son changed John's outlook on the treaty, and in his new will dictated to Bishop George Martinuzzi, John Sigismund was made heir of the Hungarian throne. John I passed away just 2 weeks later. Many Hungarian nobles, led by Martinuzzi, had no desire to be ruled by the Habsburgs, and in August they rejected Ferdinand's demand to give him the throne. Less than a month later, they declared John Sigismund the king, with Queen Isabella as his regent. Letters were sent to Krakow and Constantinople to gain the support of Poland and the Ottomans. However, the Queen's party was not strong enough, and many Hungarian feudals defected to the Habsburgs. This allowed Ferdinand, who started his campaign to take the Hungarian throne in early October, to capture Visegrad, Pest, Székesfehérvár, and other cities with relative ease. On the 21st of October 1540, Ferdinand's general Leonhard von Fels besieged the capital of Hungary, Buda. The details are unclear, but the sources claim that a plague struck the besieging army almost immediately, while the imperial and Hungarian leaders were bickering about everything. At the same time, Martinuzzi managed to spread the rumour that the Ottoman army would soon be near Buda. All that forced the Habsburgs to retreat. However, the Habsburg prince wasn't going to give up easily. Between February and March, the imperial army in Hungary was reinforced to almost 40,000 troops, and command was given to a veteran of the First Siege of Vienna, Wilhelm von Roggendorf. In response, Suleiman I's quickly assembled army, which numbered anywhere from 20 to 50,000 troops, started marching from Edirne. Von Roggendorf reached Buda, which was defended by less than 3,000 Hungarians and Serbs, on the 3rd of May. The Queen and her supporters had used the last few months reinforcing the walls and building fortifications. The Habsburg commander wasn't eager to besiege or assault these new fortifications, and attempted to negotiate with Isabella, promising her and her infant son safe passage to Poland if Ferdinand's claim to the throne was satisfied. Although the Queen was willing to accept, Hungarian lords vehemently opposed this and imprisoned her. The Imperials decided to use their artillery to soften up the defences, and between the 4th and 6th of May, their cannons managed to damage portions of the walls. However, the defenders were able to repair the fortifications every night. Von Roggendorf ordered the troops to dig trenches in order to bring the artillery closer to the city walls. By June 1st, these trenches were dug and the cannons, now brought closer, made 2 breaches in the walls. On the next day, these breaches were attacked by the Habsburg units, but the resistance was so effective in these areas that the Hungarians not only managed to repel the attack, but counterattacked, killing many before they retreated to the city. Unfortunately for the defenders, by the end of June they had lost more than half of their numbers, while supplies were running out. That is when a letter from Suleiman, saying that his vanguard would soon be within reach of Buda, arrived. A few days later, Hungarian noble Balin Turuk succeeded in breaking into the city with supplies and some reinforcements. Von Roggendorf concluded that he had to starve the city. Sometime in early July, a group supporting the Queen attempted to open the gates for the Habsburg troops, but the defenders stopped this attempt. On the 10th of July, the cavalry vanguard of the Ottoman army started to harass the Imperials from the south. Von Roggendorf's attempt to crush the small Ottoman group failed, as the Ottoman commander Hosrov Pasha's cavalry proved to be too quick, constantly retreating, pulling in smaller Habsburg units and destroying them. Throughout July, more and more Ottoman troops arrived in the area, which forced von Roggendorf to weaken the circle around the city and concentrate troops on his southern flank. This proved to be a mistake, as Suleiman reached the city on the 20th of August, but instead of joining his troops, attacked the Habsburgs from the east. This attack came as a surprise for the Imperials, and the eastern portion of the besieging army was soon destroyed. The Sultan, reinforced by the defenders of Buda, then moved to the south using his vanguard as an anvil to disperse this group too. The details of what happened next are not clear, but the Ottoman cavalry continued to harass the retreating Imperials, and in total 20,000 Habsburg troops were killed, along with their commander, who died of his wounds. Over the next few days, Suleiman celebrated alongside his Hungarian allies. However, this celebration proved to be a ruse. Hungarian nobles and the Queen spent days in the Ottoman camp, and the defenders of the city became complacent. Meanwhile, the Ottoman troops were entering and leaving the city as they pleased. This was all a trick to take over the city peacefully, and it worked as intended by the Sultan. On the 29th, the Sultan declared to Isabella that he would acknowledge her son as the king, but the territory directly under John II would be limited to Transylvania and the lands to the east of the river Tisa. Buda and all territories to the west and south of Transylvania would be converted into Ottoman pashaliks, administered by the Beylerbey of Rumelia. With that, Suleiman returned to his capital. Neither the young queen nor Martinuzzi were happy with their reduced lands and influence, so in December of 1541, they signed another secret treaty with Ferdinand at Gyalu, promising to abdicate the throne to him if he managed to retake Buda. Indeed, the Habsburg prince had sent a 50,000-strong army under Joachim II of Brandenburg to attack in August of 1542. However, their slow movement allowed the Ottoman pashas to concentrate some troops in Buda and Pest. By the time Joachim besieged Pest, it was fully defended, and the siege ended in a complete failure. Suleiman obviously had to respond, and he started his preparations in December of the same year. The goal of the campaign that started in April of 1543 was to take the strategically important Esztergom, as that fortress provided the Habsburgs with a valuable springboard to Buda. Between June and August, the Sultan managed to seize many important fortresses to the north of Buda, capping off the campaign with the occupation of Esztergom. The Habsburgs were exhausted by this war, and as the situation on the Safavid frontier once again was heating up, Suleiman also wanted peace, so a ceasefire, negotiated by the French king Francis I, was enacted in 1545. In 1547, Suleiman signed the Treaty of Edirne with Charles V and Ferdinand. His conquests in Hungary were acknowledged, while Suleiman accepted Habsburg rule over parts of Hungary in exchange for 30,000 gold florins annually. We will describe the campaign against the Safavids in 1548 in a separate video, but in short, Suleiman was able to move deeper into Iran, but overall, the campaign brought no tangible results. However, it allowed Isabella and Martinuzzi to regain hope. In 1549, Martinuzzi initiated talks with Ferdinand to unite Hungary once again. According to the treaty, Isabella and John Sigismund would abdicate in exchange for the lands in Silesia. This caused the alliance between the bishop and the queen to fracture. Isabella wrote a letter to the Sultan complaining of Martinuzzi's actions, but Suleiman didn't do anything immediately, and after a short military campaign, Isabella was defeated and forced to take the lands in Silesia. Still, Martinuzzi tried to play both sides, hoping to secure an even better deal from either the Ottomans or the Habsburgs. In 1551, Ferdinand caught wind of this kowtowing and ordered his execution. Nevertheless, the damage had been done, and the Sultan had become aware of the treachery coming out of his vassal kingdom to the north. His response was quick, decisive, and heavy-handed. Come springtime of the following year, the Ottoman army would once again launch a full-scale campaign into Hungarian territory, rip out Ferdinand's holdings root and stem, and end any hope of a united Hungary under Habsburg rule. Two Ottoman armies were formed up in March of 1552. The first was a garrison out of the occupied Buda, led by one Kadim Ali Pasha, while the second was sent by the Sultan himself from Constantinople, led by Kara Ahmed Pasha. Contemporary accounts numbered the combined Ottoman rally at over 150,000 men, but modern historians consider a number closer to 40 or 50,000 to be a more accurate account. As expected, outposts and fortresses fell like dominoes to overwhelming Ottoman might. Kadim's force took the castles of Szeged, Veszprém, Buják, Drige and Széchenyi, while Kara Ahmed routed a force of Habsburg Spaniards out of Temesvar. The two armies rendezvoused outside Szolnok on September 4th, and together captured the township with little effort. From a geopolitical standpoint, their next objective was clear. The combined Ottoman armies would advance upon the small fortress of Eger and seize it, thereby dividing Ferdinand's remaining western and northern holdings into two halves. The garrison at Eger Castle was only around 2,000 men strong, led by the 50-year-old commander István Dobó. The men and women within the fortress were native Hungarians. Despite being sworn to King Ferdinand, they fought not for plunder or glory, but to protect their home, a land which they had cultivated for generations. The Ottomans arrived at the fortress on September 11th and set up their encampments, preparing for a siege. 5 days later, the bombardment began. Pasha Ali led the artillery effort, inflicting major damage upon Eger's walls despite having only 4 large siege guns at his disposal. The Hungarians' own cannons were smaller and had not the range nor firepower to put up an effective resistance. Yet the resolve of the defenders did not waver. Dobbo systematically sent out wave after wave of light cavalry to sally and harass the Ottoman bombardiers. They dealt some casualties, but these hit-and-run tactics proved ultimately ineffective, and the shelling continued. Inevitably, the walls crumbled and a breach was created. The Ottoman infantry under Kara Ahmed seized their opportunity and launched a full assault upon the walls. And yet, the overwhelmingly outnumbered defenders held the line, fighting valiantly upon the breach due largely to the bravery and charisma of their veteran commander. Hungarian engineering played a crucial role as peasant and soldier alike repulsed the Turkish tide day after day. Dobbo's second-in-command, Gergely Bonamissa, cemented his legacy as the inventor of a slew of anti-siege weaponry. Thanks to his craftsmanship, the defenders employed a primitive form of hand grenade that caused concussive destruction and spread fire through the enemy ranks. But the most iconic instrument of destruction devised by Bonamissa was an improvised vehicle of death, a set of 2 mill wheels stuffed at the center with explosives and lit aflame, then rolled downhill at the Ottoman ranks during their many assaults upon the fortress breach. These fire wheels caused panic and mass destruction, and played a major role in keeping the attackers at bay. By the turn of the month, the Turkish commanders had grown tired of their infantry's ineffectiveness, and had refocused their efforts beneath the earth. As they'd done in countless sieges before, the Ottoman sappers began digging a network of tunnels that inched towards the fortress, setting explosive mines to undermine the wall's foundations. After all, if the Ottomans could blast more breaches into Eger's defences, it would force the already thinly spread Hungarians to defend on multiple fronts. Dobbo, however, proved highly competent at counter-siege, and set a series of countermines that obliterated the Ottoman sappers as they dug even closer. Meanwhile, morale in the Ottoman camp was at an all-time low. Food rations had been reduced, and the heavy autumn rains had begun to fall, reducing their living conditions into a muddy hellscape. To compound all this, the army's 2 commanding viziers, Kadim Ali and Kara Ahmed, began feuding heavily with one another, and rumours of corruption amongst the Turkish commanders spread like wildfire. On October 11th, the Ottomans launched one final all-out assault upon Eger's battered walls, and once more the defenders held. Here the women of the fortress entered into legend, stepping right into the fray alongside their sons and husbands, slinging buckets of boiling oil onto the foe. After 2 days, the Ottomans withdrew, having gained no ground against their resolute enemy. On October 17th, the dual viziers ordered a full withdrawal from the fortress. Weather, morale and infighting had all compounded, and the invading force, beaten and exhausted, abandoned the fight. It was over. Against all odds, the Hungarian defenders had won. Modern estimates account for only 300 defenders dead, while the Ottomans lost over 8,000 men. Thanks to the heroics of István Dobbo and his unlikely group of underdogs, the Habsburgs retained their foothold in northern Hungary. Suleiman had once more failed to remove his pesky rivals from the region for good. Conversely, the Ottoman campaign of 1552 had still been an overall success, as they had captured 24 other Habsburg fortresses. Either way, the struggle for domination over this war-torn kingdom would inevitably continue.